If you use your voice for a living, if you're a teacher, a singer, a lawyer, or honestly just someone who talks a lot, you know this feeling. It's that universal frustration when your voice just feels tired. But what if we could finally put a number on that feeling? Well, a brand new clinical tool is promising to do exactly that, and it might just change how we approach vocal health altogether. You know what I'm talking about, right? You've been in meetings, on calls, maybe teaching a class all day, and by the end of it, your voice is just raspy, it feels strained, it's just plain worn out. And that's not just in your head. It is a real, legitimate condition, and it affects so many people, especially those of us who really need our voice to do our jobs. Clinically, we call this vocal fatigue. And for speech-language pathologists, for us SLPs, this is one of the most common complaints we hear from clients. It's basically the feeling of your voice just running out of gas. You have to push harder just to get the sound out, and sometimes you can even feel that physical strain or even pain in your throat. Okay, so here's the big problem, the one that SLPs and researchers have been wrestling with for years. We can all feel vocal fatigue, but how in the world do you actually measure it, objectively? It sounds simple, but it's a surprisingly tough nut to crack. So to get at this, researchers usually break fatigue down into two different types. On one side, you've got perceived fatigue. That's all about the feeling. It's what your client tells you, what they report on a questionnaire. But on the other side, you have performance fatigue. And these are the real, actual, measurable acoustic changes that are happening to the voice. And here's the tricky part, the disconnect. A client might feel totally exhausted vocally, but when you run the numbers, their voice's acoustic performance hasn't changed all that much. Or you could have the exact opposite happen. That gap, that's what makes this so incredibly hard to measure. And this disconnect leads to some really big challenges for us in the clinic. Just relying on how a patient feels is not the whole picture. A lot of the objective tools are way too complex or just not available in a typical clinic. And some of those classic acoustic measures, they don't even work that well on voices that are already really strained. Plus, and this is a big one, you can't just ask a client with a voice disorder to read out loud for an hour to make them tired. It's not just impractical, it's potentially unsafe. So with all of these issues, the field was kind of stuck. What we really needed was a tool that was objective, fast, safe, and, this is the key, that could combine both the feeling and the facts. And that is exactly what a team of researchers set out to create. Their goal was to build a single, comprehensive index that could finally bring both sides of that coin together, the subjective feeling of being tired and the objective changes in how the voice is performing. This whole effort led to the creation of what they call the Comprehensive Index of Vocal Fatigue, or the CIVF for short. As the researchers themselves said in their 2023 paper, the need for this kind of all-in-one index was a huge gap in vocal healthcare. They saw the problem, and they really went for a solution. And the method they came up with? It's actually surprisingly elegant and simple. Now, this is what I find so cool about this whole thing. They made the process so incredibly simple. This isn't some complicated hour-long lab experiment. No, this is designed to fit right into a busy SLP's actual workflow. Let's just walk through it real quick. It's unbelievably straightforward. First, the SLP hits record and has the client read one single sentence. That's your baseline. Then the client reads a standard passage out loud, and this only takes about 70 or 80 seconds. That's it. That's the entire vocal task. And finally, they read that same first sentence one more time. The real magic of the CIVF is in the analysis of the tiny acoustic differences between that before recording and the after one. So what is this formula actually looking at in those recordings? Well, it combines a few key acoustic measures. One is called CPP, which you can kind of think of as the purity or the clarity of the voice. Another is SR, which is all about the balance of energy between the low and high frequencies. But what's really crucial here is that the formula also looks at the stability of those measures. Like, does the voice start to get shaky after just that short little task? And then, and this is the secret sauce, it combines all that hard data with the patient's own report of how tired their voice feels. But you might be wondering, did this super short task actually work? Did it induce fatigue? Well, take a look at this chart. This shows a really key finding. After that simple 70-second reading task, the group of patients who had voice disorders showed a really significant jump in vocal strain, what we call overall severity. And the healthy control group? Absolutely no change. This was the proof. Their short, safe protocol was more than enough to reliably bring on measurable performance fatigue.
Okay, so we know the test works, but the million-dollar question for any clinician is, how well can it actually diagnose a problem? This is where the research gives us a really clear, powerful answer.
The diagnostic accuracy of the CIVF clocked in at 0.864. Now, for any clinical tool, that is a very, very strong score. It means it's highly effective at telling the difference between people with a voice disorder and people without one, just based on their vocal fatigue profile. And what's even better, the research gives us a clear clinical cutoff score. If you get a CIVF score above 2.6489, that's an indicator of significant vocal fatigue. This gives SLPs a solid, evidence-based number to work with, which is huge. It moves the whole assessment of fatigue from this kind of vague feeling to a metric you can actually quantify. And this is why the CIVF is such a potential game changer for us in the clinic. I mean, for the first time, an SLP can put a real number on that super common complaint of, my voice just feels tired. We can track that number over time to actually prove that our therapy is working. And because the whole test takes less than 2 minutes, you can make it a part of every single evaluation. It's also an incredible tool for educating our clients, helping them see that connection between how their voice feels and how it's actually performing. And this just opens up the door for proactive care, letting us screen people like teachers and singers for those early signs of fatigue before they become a bigger problem. So, this research really leaves us with a powerful idea. For so long, vocal fatigue has been this subjective thing that's been really hard to pin down, but with a tool like the CIVF, we're really moving toward a future where checking on your vocal health could become a quick, standard, and objective part of just routine care. I mean, imagine, what if checking your vocal fatigue score became as normal as getting your blood pressure checked? That's the really exciting possibility that this new index opens up for all of us.